episode 3 of the college sailing season. I am Jane Mackey.
And I'm Chris Love.
Eric has the week off, and Chris, it looks like you're back in the Chalk Talk World headquarters there.
Yep, back here in the studios in Austin, and to celebrate the new season, I got this couch. So, did you miss the announcement last week? Well, here's your one-time only second chance. US Sailing is giving away one great prize every week to a lucky winner. Our first giveaway is this pair of Hobie polarized Segundo sunglasses, a $210 value. All you gotta do is go to ussailing.org, click Racing, then College Membership. And you might even be there right now watching this video. If that's the case, just scroll to the bottom and enter your info. And if you already entered last week, thank you, but please go ahead and enter your info again for us. And tune in next week to see who won.
So moving into the week in review, first up we have the Moody Trophy at URI. Now they had great conditions on Saturday out at Survivor Island. They were able to get off 8 races in each division. Lucky because on Sunday it was a total wash, no races were sailed at all. Sophomore Kieran Chung and junior Carolyn Ortel get it done for the Stanford Cardinal in B Division, giving them the substantial win over second place Brown and third place Charleston. Thanks to Nick Ewanson for the video.
And another beautiful Saturday up on Seneca Lake for the Hobart William Smith Fall Interconference. Saturday, beautiful conditions, 8 races. At the end of the day, Navy leads by 3 points. Sunday, again, light and shifty, but they got 4 more races in. Navy extends its lead to 17 over New York Maritime, led by freshman skipper Michael Pope.
Moving on to Navy Women's Fall, this was the regatta to watch this weekend. We had over half of the teams listed in last week's rankings sailing at this event. Again, great breeze on Saturday, not so great on Sunday, but they didn't even have to worry about it because they got 16 races, a full rotation completed in just under 7 hours on Saturday.
Yeah, and they also hosted Mesa Single Hand Championships for the men at the same venue at the same time. No big deal. But in A Division, it was Bowdoin's Kaylee Schwitzer and Julia Rue taking the win. Charleston's Kayla Gibson, Sarah Soames winning B, and Navy's Marissa Lehan winning the radials. But it was St. Mary's combined effort that gets them the win overall. Well, it looks like our picks were a lot better this weekend. The 3 of us combined to pick the whole podium. Jane, I'm giving you half credit since your team won, but you had Mimi Roller sailing in laser radials, and in fact, she sailed B Division.
Chris, I've never heard that rule before. I think we may need to talk about this offline. But anyway, so we haven't talked about single-handed qualifiers or match racing qualifiers for the national champs coming up later this fall. The reason we haven't is because there are 21 of them, and we're trying to avoid making Chalk Talk an hour-long episode each week. But now that most of them are completed, it's about time we make a little check-in. So this past weekend at the match race qualifiers in NISA, Yale and Tufts took the 2 top spots. So they'll be moving on to the Nationals in Texas in November. We've got a couple more qualifiers going around the country in the next couple of weeks, so we'll be checking back in after those have made some headway.
And in the Midwest, they had their women's single-hand championships, but unfortunately only attracted 3 sailors, all of whom were from University of Minnesota. So the district is faced with a little bit of a challenge here. Either they can reschedule that and try to get full participation, or they're going to lose one of their berths. They'll send their top sailor to nationals, but their second berth will go to SESA. Incidentally, it would have gone to the Northwest, but they too fell short of the minimum 5 teams required, and so that's why it ends up that way.
Now the rest of the roster for the women's and men's singles is almost complete. We've just got PCC SC to go, and they'll be hosting their qualifiers in the next couple of weeks at actually the Nationals venue. So we'll give you a full update once that is all complete.
Okay, now it's time to check in with our friend Meredith Powlison over at Sailing World Magazine headquarters. Meredith, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again this season, Chris.
All right, so let's start it off. First episode, we have the rankings. How do the Sailing World rankings work?
So the Sailing World College Rankings, which are sponsored by Sperry Topsider, are determined by an open coaches poll every other week. And basically, coaches from around the country can go in, vote online, and then I tally up the results. And every other week, we publish the top 20 co-ed and top 15 women's teams, along with teams that have also received votes from at least 2 coaches in the country.
All right, so let's take a look at this week's rankings. What's going on in the co-ed scene?
So this week we published our 3rd college rankings of the season, and we had 22 coaches vote. And you'll notice that in the co-ed rankings and the women's rankings, the top 2 teams remain unchanged. There has been a little shuffling in the top 5. Charleston has moved up to 3rd place, and Brown and Boston College round out the top 5. And that means that some teams have had to drop out of the top 5. And those 2 teams were Roger Williams and Dartmouth this week. Another thing to note when you look at the poll a little further down is Fordham. And Fordham was ranked in the also receiving votes section in both the preseason poll and the first poll of the season. And in the last ranking, they moved up to 18th place, and then this week they've moved up to 17th place. So we've seen steady improvement from Fordham that will be interesting to watch in the next couple of polls here.
Yeah, we'll see if they keep climbing. Over on the women's side, you mentioned Yale unchanged, pretty overwhelming vote for first place, but what's different with the rest of the rankings?
So in the women's, the biggest change was St. Mary's. St. Mary's was ranked 10th in the last poll, and this week they've moved up to 3rd place. And 5 coaches voted for them for first place this week. Another big move that we saw in the women's poll was Bowdoin. Bowdoin was in the also receiving votes in last week's poll, but this week they've moved up to 10th place. So another major gain. And it's interesting to look down to the also receiving votes section. You'll see that 7 teams are in that spot. So there's definitely a lot of teams with the opportunity to move up. So it'll be interesting to look at in the coming weeks here.
All right. Well, thanks so much. You can access the rankings online at sailingworld.com. And of course, we'll have Meredith back in 2 weeks from today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you, Meredith Powelson. And moving on to this weekend ahead. Now we have the big women's regatta, which is Yale Women's, sailed on the open water venue. Tends to be a bit breezier at this time of year, and if the wind direction is right, they'll probably be having big waves. Now I looked at the weather forecast, and Saturday looks a little bit lighter, but Sunday looks like it's going to be true to form, forecasting 20 to 25 right now. That will make it fun for the girls. Now we have the full roster of NISA teams competing here, as well as some of the top teams from around the rest of the country. So this should be a great regatta.
The Captain Hurst at Dartmouth will be competitive at the top, definitely. We've got a bunch of NISA teams who are not attending the big event at Navy, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's definitely going to be the 2nd tier intersectional for the weekend.
Now the Stony Brook held at Treasure Island is just coming in on the coattails of the America's Cup that's been sailing out there for the past week. It's one of the biggest regattas for the West Coast, and in fact it's one of the biggest regattas in college sailing in general because they host multiple divisions at one time. So it's varsity sailing, women's, and junior varsity as well.
Looks like nearly all of the Pacific Coast Conference and most of the Northwest Conference will be there. I hope you guys have a great time out at that one. All right, now turning to Navy Fall. This is the co-ed version of the regatta we saw last weekend at Navy, except this time it's 4 divisions. A and B will switch between FJs and 420s. C division is laser full rigs, and D division laser radials. So a true test of depth for the teams attending this weekend. And we've got teams from all over the country coming in. Similar forecast for Saturday. Looks like it could be a little bit lighter and cool. Sunday, breezy and a potential for hot weather. So nice for these teams that are coming from up north to be headed down south this time of year.
So looking at this lineup, my prediction is Yale, very deep, I'm still not 100% sure who they're sending, but I think that they have enough people and players to field a great team here.
This week I'm going to roll the dice a little bit. I'm remembering 2009 Navy Fall. Juan Magley from Charleston had just an amazing performance in lasers. He was like averaging 2 3/4 points. I'm hoping that after his stint at the Olympics, he's going to come back, do it again, and lead his team, Charleston, to a victory this year.
Yale and Charleston are very good picks, but I've got to take Georgetown here. They've got returning College Seller of the Year, Barnard in A Division, Nevin Snow. 1A Division at the Nevins, done well otherwise, and B, Greg Martinez, great laser sailor in C Division. D Division, Alex Post, probably not going to win the division there, but the other 3 could certainly carry the team to a win at the Navy Fall, so I'm taking Georgetown.
All right, now on to this week's feature story. I was able to sit down with a 4-time All-American and current 49er Olympic campaigner, Yale graduate, Zach Brown, who's written a series of articles for college sailing on sail1design.com. So what has sort of the trend been? Give us an idea of what boats college sailing is using and why.
Well, I guess you can start all the way back to when Yale kind of began college sailing back in, I don't know, the 18-something or others. And we used an International 420 right off the bat because that was the hot boat at the time. And people found, you bump rails and then the rails split open. You flip the boat over and you stick the mast in the mud and then you bend the mast. So college sailing had progressed from all the way then to like the professional grade it is now with sturdier, stronger, and slower boats so that you can ram each other at full speed and nothing happens.
In your article, you talk about some of the alternatives to 420s and FJs. You said almost 90% or more than 90% of all events are sailed in those 2 boats. But talk about some of the other traditional alternatives and some of the alternatives coming down the line. I know MIT obviously has been a big developer of new boats and new ideas.
Yeah, so pretty much you have other boats besides FJs and 420s because venues are not all the same. So if you think about sailing, it's pretty tough sailing a 420 or FJ when there's, I don't know, 5 knots of breeze or less. It's just really difficult. The boats are really weight sensitive. So you need something that's a little more powered up. And, if you're sailing on a shifty venue, you need a boat that can tack quickly and sail kind of higher angles upwind. And so that's when you're looking at like a Lark or a Firefly or, even a Tech dinghy. And those boats offer flat water venues and shifty venues, just the the perfect boat because you can get around the course in a little less wind and you can tack around quickly.
You've sailed the Fireflies before. You've actually raced them over at the Wilson Trophy, probably the best known, at least for Americans, the best known regatta that uses Fireflies. Do you see, would they be a possibility to have greater use besides just one venue in college sailing? Do you think it could be picked up by more?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I take my experience with Fireflies is team racing because they are, besides the Vanguard 15, they are the ultimate team race boat that the Firefly is because the action is close, the boat speeds are really relative, and it's, I don't know, you can tack fast, you don't have to be, the weight ranges, you can be heavy or light, it all works well.
Given the landscape, the current landscape of college sailing, and given that the technical abilities of boat builders, where do you think that college sailing is going to go in the next decade or 2?
Well, yeah, Laser Performance came out. They're coming out with this new collegiate 420, and they're using more modern boat building techniques of using a core, in the whole laminate process so that you can build boats stronger and they're actually lighter. So this boat they're coming out, the Collegiate 420, is 20 pounds lighter. When, 20 pounds doesn't sound that much, but it ends up being a pretty significant difference when you're trying to get planing and whatnot. So, and I know Rondar 420 has had a similar product that they've been working on as well. But yeah, this idea of slightly lighter boats that are still just as strong, if not stronger. The first set of boats you're going to see from them, they're going to have the inboard, the jib leads moved slightly inboard more. They're going to be, as I said, 20 pounds lighter. The forward bulkhead area is going to be sealed in, so you're not going to have water flowing up through there. And there's going to be a few other small changes, but for the most part, it's not going to be too different. But then from moving on the next few years, they said they're open to in testing and working on, maybe a lighter, more tunable mast, different sail shapes, and when you start adding on more elements like that, or better foils, eventually, that could be a remarkable change that would really benefit college sailing.
All right. Well, you can read the rest of Zach's thoughts on his articles on airwaves over at sail1design.com. And I'm sure we'll see more writing to come and maybe have you back on the show as well.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for having me, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach, for joining us on the show, and thank you all for tuning in. Join us back next week when we'll be reviewing the winner of the US Sailing Sunglass Prize Draw and all the regattas that were sailed. Good luck to everyone sailing this weekend.
Thanks for watching. Sail fast.